Imagine this. You walk into your office on a Monday morning, you open the cash drawer, and $5,000 is gone. The room looks undisturbed, the doors were locked, no windows were broken, and yet the money has completely vanished. Your heart is pounding, your mind is racing, and you have absolutely no idea where to begin. This is the moment that separates people who panic from people who investigate. And today, I am going to teach you step by step, slowly and clearly, exactly how to investigate a theft case the way a professional does it. Whether you are a security officer, a business owner, a private investigator, or simply someone who wants to understand how real investigations work. Because the truth is, investigating theft is not about guessing. It is not about accusing the first person you suspect, and it is definitely not about reacting with emotion. It is about following a system, gathering facts, building a picture piece by piece, and letting the evidence do the talking. So let us start from the very beginning. The very first thing you must do when a theft is reported or discovered is to secure the scene. And I want you to understand why this is so critically important. Because the scene of a theft is a living document. It contains fingerprints, footprints, disturbed objects, hair fibers, digital timestamps, and dozens of other tiny details that can be destroyed in seconds if people walk through it carelessly. So the moment you know a theft has occurred, you stop everyone from entering or touching anything. You establish a boundary, and if this is a serious criminal matter, you call law enforcement immediately. Because police have legal authority to collect evidence in ways that hold up in court. And if you tamper with or disturb the scene before they arrive, you could accidentally destroy the very proof you need. But if this is an internal workplace investigation or a situation where police involvement is not immediate, then you yourself must treat that scene like it is made of glass. Photograph everything before you touch it, and I mean everything. Photograph the entire room from multiple angles. Photograph the specific area where the item was stored. Photograph any doors, windows, locks, drawers, or containers that were involved. Because photographs are time-stamped, and they become your permanent record of exactly what the scene looked like at the moment of discovery. And once you have done that, you begin your first written entry in what investigators call a case log, which is simply a dedicated notebook or digital document where you record every single action you take, every person you speak to, every piece of information you receive, and every observation you make, written with dates, times, and your full signature. Because a case log is the backbone of any investigation. It shows that your process was methodical, it protects you from accusations of bias, and it gives you a reference point when you are sitting across from someone a week later trying to remember what they told you. Now, once the scene is secured and your documentation has begun, you move into what is called the information gathering phase. And this is where you ask a very simple but powerful question. What exactly was taken? When was it last seen? And who had access to it during that window of time? And the reason you ask these three questions first is because they immediately begin to narrow the universe of possibilities. So for example, if a laptop was stolen from a locked office and it was confirmed present at 6 p.m. on Tuesday and discovered missing at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, then your investigation automatically focuses on that 15-hour window. And you immediately want to know who had physical access to that office during those 15 hours. Who had a key? Who knew the access code? Who was working late? Who came in early? And this is where witness interviews become your most powerful tool, because people see things, people hear things, and people remember details they do not even realize are important. So you begin interviewing everyone who was present or nearby during the time frame in question. And here is the key principle of a good witness interview. You never lead the witness, you never suggest answers, and you never tell them what you think happened. Because if you say, "Do you think John took it?" you have just planted a seed of bias in that person's memory. Instead, you ask open-ended questions like, "Can you tell me everything you noticed yesterday between 6 p.m. and 9 a.m.? Did you see anyone in or near that office? Did anything seem unusual or out of place? Did you hear anything?" And you listen without interrupting, you write down their exact words, and you notice not just what they say, but how they say it. Because hesitation, nervousness, inconsistency, and over-explaining are all behavioral signals that trained investigators pay close attention to. And while you're conducting interviews, you are also simultaneously building what investigators call a suspect list, which is not a list of people you personally think are guilty, but rather a list of people who had the means, the motive, and the opportunity to commit the theft. And these three elements, means, motive, and opportunity, are the holy trinity of any theft investigation. Means refers to whether the person had the physical ability to carry out the theft. Did they have a key? Did they know the location of the item? Did they have the tools or access required? Motive refers to whether the person had a reason to steal. Are they in financial trouble? Do they have a grudge against the owner? Have they been caught stealing before? And opportunity refers to whether they were physically present and had unsupervised access during the critical time window. And the person or persons who score high on all three of these factors rise to the top of your investigation as persons of interest. But even then, you do not accuse anyone yet, because in a professional investigation, suspicion and evidence are two completely different things, and you need evidence. So the next critical step is to pull and analyze all available surveillance footage. And in today's world, this is often the most decisive step in any theft case. So you collect footage from every camera that covers the relevant area, the entry points, the hallways, the parking lot, and the surrounding area, and you review it frame by frame during the critical time window, looking for who entered, who exited, who lingered, who carried a bag or container that could hold the stolen item. And you look for anomalies, someone using a different entrance than usual, someone walking quickly or nervously, someone accessing an area they normally wouldn't go to. And if the footage is clear enough to identify individuals, this becomes your most powerful piece of direct evidence. But even if the footage is grainy or the person's face is not visible, behavioral patterns on camera can still be enormously useful in narrowing your suspect list. And alongside surveillance footage, you must also examine all digital records that are relevant to the case, such as access logs from electronic door systems, which record exactly when a key card or code was used and by whom, computer login records if the theft involved digital property or if a computer was used to facilitate the theft, phone records if company phones were involved, and even email or messaging records if there is reason to believe communication about the theft occurred through company systems. Because in a modern theft case, the digital trail is often just as revealing as the physical one. And once you have gathered all of this evidence, your photographs, your witness statements, your surveillance footage, your access logs, and your digital records, you lay it all out and you begin the process of cross-referencing and connecting the dots, meaning you take every piece of information and you ask, how does this relate to every other piece of information? Does the witness statement match what the camera shows? Does the access log confirm that the suspect was in the building during the time window? Does the person's claimed alibi hold up when you check it against the digital records? And this process of cross-referencing is where investigations either gain tremendous momentum or hit a wall. Because strong investigations are built on evidence that tells the same story from multiple independent directions. So, for example, if a witness says they saw someone near the office at 7 p.m. and the access log shows that person's keycard was used at 6:58 p.m., and the surveillance camera shows them entering with a backpack and leaving without one 30 minutes later, then you have three independent pieces of evidence all pointing in the same direction, and that is when your case begins to solidify. But if the evidence is contradictory or unclear, you go back to interviews, you ask follow-up questions, you revisit the scene, and you continue gathering until the picture becomes clear. And there is one more element of theft investigation that most people overlook, which is the behavioral and psychological dimension. Because experienced investigators know that people who have committed theft often exhibit specific behavioral changes after the fact. They may become unusually defensive when the theft is discussed in group settings. They may distance themselves from the investigation. They may change their routine. They may try to shift suspicion towards someone else. They may display sudden anxiety or excessive helpfulness in an overcorrected attempt to appear innocent. And while none of these behaviors are proof of guilt on their own, when combined with physical and digital evidence, they form a powerful composite picture. And this is why good investigators pay attention to not just what people say in interviews, but how their behavior has changed since the theft occurred. And once you have built your case to the point where evidence clearly points to a specific individual, the next step is to present your findings. And how you do this depends entirely on the nature of the investigation. If this is a criminal matter, you hand your documentation, your evidence, and your case log over to law enforcement and let the legal process take over, because it is not the investigator's job to punish. It is the investigator's job to find and preserve the truth. And if this is an internal workplace investigation, you present your findings to HR or management in a formal written report that clearly outlines the evidence, the timeline, the witnesses interviewed, and your conclusions. And that report must be factual, it must be objective, it must not contain personal opinions or emotionally charged language, and it must be backed by documented evidence for every claim it makes. Because a poorly written or emotionally biased investigation report can destroy a case even when the underlying evidence is strong. And now I want you to take away the single most important principle from everything I have just taught you. Investigating theft is not about finding someone to blame. It is about finding the truth. And the truth can only be found through patience, through systematic thinking, through careful documentation, and through a relentless commitment to following the evidence wherever it leads. Because the world is full of theft cases that were never solved, not because the evidence was not there, but because the investigator moved too fast, assumed too quickly, or stopped looking too soon. So whether you are investigating the theft of company property, a stolen vehicle, a missing valuable, or a complex fraud, the principles remain the same. Secure the scene, document everything, gather evidence from every available source, interview every relevant witness, build your timeline, cross-reference your evidence, stay objective, and let the facts speak for themselves. Because when you do this right, the truth almost always surfaces, and that is the power of a professional theft investigation. If you found this valuable, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more deep dive investigative content, and remember, every case starts with one step. Take it carefully.